Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session with Applica. Am I
Yeah,
am I saying that? I should have asked this
Applica,
before we
yeah.
went live. Applica. So we have a really interesting session today on user onboarding, and this is going to be a little different from our typical webinars. Jason has prepared more of a presentation style, so we're going to let him go through the presentation and. If you would go ahead and put questions that you have in the question box as they come up, and then upvote any questions that you think would be especially interesting to answer, and then we will have plenty of time at the end for Q&A since I'm not going to ramble on as I typically do in webinars. Um, one of the things I love about folks like Jason, and I've talked about this a lot on the Subclub podcast that I host, is that Jason and Applica, they work with tons of apps and have seen all different kinds of apps in all different kinds of scenarios. And I think any one practitioner at any one app can sometimes overthink what works and what doesn't, based on what worked for them and assume it's going to work for everybody. And the thing that's great about folks like Jason is that they try something and then they try it with 10 different apps, and some apps it works, some apps it doesn't. But today's session, I think, is the kind of thing that is applicable to almost any app. And onboarding is so dang important to being successful as an app. So super excited about today's session. And for those of you who are still joining, I'll say it again, drop your questions into the question box and we will have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So with that out of the way, Jason, I'll let you take it over and present your presentation here.
Nice, thanks, David. Yeah, great intro. Yeah, so I think yeah, obviously it's excellent to be here. Big fan of the pod. Revenue cat yourself, so really happy to be discussing this topic. I'd also like to say I do have a brilliant team that I work with. So, got superstar product analyst, Michael, really good product manager, Alexis, and really good UX designer, Helen, and obviously work with like a range of different developers. So, all of that wouldn't be possible. All of this wouldn't be possible without them. And so, yeah, I'm a head of product growth at Applica. So, yeah, like David said, work across a bunch of different clients, different apps, a lot in the ed tech and health and wellness space. So, yeah, I'll dive into I'll get started with this, redefining user onboarding. And yeah, 5-minute journal is featuring in this case study. So I think, yeah, the content is split into these 5 areas, but essentially what I'd hopefully like you to get out of this session is these 3 things. So I think, jobs to be done, it can be quite daunting, I think. Like, where do you start? Like, I first learnt about it maybe about 7 years ago from a short book that was sent to me by Anthony Ulwick. So I worked with a mobile development agency called Moobaloo during my digital strategy days, when I worked for an IPT agency, and that was kind of my first sort of foray into product. And then shortly after that, I got into e-commerce and product management, and kind of went from there. And got into mobile apps maybe like 4 years ago. So there's lots of different applications for jobs to be done. But essentially, it's a super interesting research method. And likewise with MaxDiff, there's many different applications. It's traditionally a method for ranking people's preferences by asking them a series of questions multiple times to get the best and worst options, and then from a group of statements, and then you get you can prioritize certain things, benefit lists, for example. And then once you have the data, what do you do with it? How do you connect the dots between these 2 user research methods? So yeah, quick background, just in terms of Applica. So yeah, headquarters are in London. They're born out of the Ukraine. They were started by 2 guys, Sviat and Artem. And they have a really strong background in product and marketing. I think Sviat used to work at Better Me when they were much smaller. So there's really good backing there. And 5-minute journal are a sort of mindfulness journaling app created by Alex and Mimi Icon. So bit of influencer sort of backed app there. Yeah, so a short background. So yeah, the challenge, I think this is quite typical, quite a typical problem for apps once they reach a certain size. and also depending on what category you kind of operate within. So yeah, like low child starts, day one retention, there could be like a number of reasons why you're experiencing that. But we, yeah, in particular noticed that the onboarding had quite a low conversion rate. So we kind of started to look into reasons why that might be. And we hypothesized that if we could really understand what users kind of wanted from the app, really understand their needs, we could maybe, create something better. And it had been a while since the onboarding flow had been refreshed. And also there had been quite a lot of successes at the time around longer onboarding. So we thought if we can find a sweet spot for the audience, we can maybe make it work for FMJ. So yeah, we started to explore the solutions, and I think bringing the onboarding experience to life by appealing to users' needs is something that's talked about a lot, like in the industry. But I think in practice, it can take a lot of work, and a lot of a lot of the time, users don't really know what they need. So it's you need to put a lot of thought into trying to figure that out. And really get to under the hood of it all. And then the other consideration is how much time and resource do you have in order to explore this, because you can spend anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months just on the research. So it really depends on the size of your team, the stage you're in, how many people you have to spend on this sort of stuff. So we had a couple of months and previous experience with Jobs to be Done and MaxDiff. So we kind of pulled together an approach that included these methods, and it really helped us achieve what we wanted to, basically. So it worked within the time constraints and resource that we had. And so yeah, we had this 3-step approach. So start with Jobs to be Done interviews, understand what users need, prioritize user needs based on MaxDiff, and then A/B test and measure. So relatively straightforward. And then of course, we wanted to create a user-centric approach. So always start by putting yourself in your audience's shoes, thinking about their use cases and understand how to address their pain points. So yeah, I'm sure everyone's aware of Daniel Kahneman and his book Thinking Fast and Slow. But the book's main thesis is basically a differentiation between 2 modes of thought. So system 1 is fast, intuitive and emotional, and system 2 is more slower, more deliberative and more logical. So we think that when a user first interacts with an app, they're pretty much in this system 1 thinking. So that essentially means that you need to act quickly and get users to quickly understand what they're getting out of the app and convince them that it's for solves their problems. So we tend to think about it using these 4 questions. So all of this is happening super quickly. And as we've seen from your latest state of subscription apps report, 80 to 90% of all trials happen on day 0. So the first session experience is crucial, and by addressing these questions, you'll be in a better place. So I think so from taking FMJ as an example, does this app solve my problem? So say you're thinking, oh, I'm stressed out with work, I need to find an outlet for it. I've tried journaling before and I liked it, so that's kind of a good start. Can I trust this app? So you're thinking, why should I choose this app over Stoic, for example? Does it have any trustworthy recommendations? You're kind of thinking whether it's credible and reliable. Do you like how the app functions? Maybe that's more me, but I'm sure other users think about that as well. And then how quickly can I start journaling? So do I know how to get what I want from this app? Is it really clear? How clear is the value proposition? And then how quickly does this app provide solutions to my problem? So am I motivated to solve it right now? So breaking that kind of thinking down is, I think, super important to getting the most out of the interviews. Yeah, so a bit on the detail then. So I've included this recap just in case there are some newbies to the framework. But I'm sure a lot of people are kind of aware of it in some capacity, so I won't spend too much time. But I guess the one thing worth highlighting is that Jobs to be Done really keeps the focus on what people actually need and the outcomes they care about. So it's that basically ensures that product decisions are driven by what truly matters, and which should be basically helping users make progress in their lives or achieve something. Not just about adding more features. So during the interviews, we identify and describe the jobs that users indicate to us through their responses, and then this description structure is basically general for all jobs. So it's a nice sort of outline of the structure. And then before I dive into like interviews and how to approach those, I think understanding what the job is is important. So job is basically the progress a user is trying to make in a particular circumstance. So it's not about what the product does, but rather the underlying need or goal that drives a person to use it. So a job typically has a functional aspect, so what the user is trying to do, an emotional aspect, like how they want to feel, and a social aspect, so how they want to be perceived. So a job exists whether your product does or not. And then there's a distinction between use case and job as well. So the use case is basically describes how someone interacts with your product to get that job done. So I think that's also an important distinction to understand. So this when gives you a bit of context around how to build that out. So looking at triggers, context, certain characteristics and past experience, why they might be interested in the app compared to others. And then this is kind of the structure in terms of what you would expect, what users want, what they're trying to achieve, the importance of performing that job, to manage their stress, their mental health. So I think in order to get the most out of this part, you need to have create I think a well-structured interview guide that covers the main areas you need to cover. So it kind of makes it much easier to define all of this if you have that, and therefore you can synthesize the most impactful and actionable insights. So the way we tend to think about it is there's core dimensions and extended dimensions. So there's the core areas are made up of 5 different areas. So previous solutions, so what users have tried before and how they found your solution. Decision triggers, so specific circumstances that prompted their search, for example. Success criteria, so what users hope to achieve with the solution. Usage patterns, so how often and why the job matters. Selection factors, so how users assess and compare options. And then the other areas are things like the emotional journey, so the feelings that drive decisions and shape experiences, social influence, how relationships and perceptions affect product usage, acceptable compromises, so what users will give up to get their job done, user maturity, and job ecosystem. So obviously all of this is a lot to fit into one interview, so I wouldn't expect you to do that, but you'd have to pick maybe in between 4 and 6 things that you really want to understand. And then kind of shape the interview based on that. And then obviously you can kind of iterate on those. So why it matters. So essentially jobs to be done help to generate the scope of value propositions via the user interviews. So I'll dig into how we use this insight a bit later, but I just want to cover MaxDiff quickly, and then we'll go into the details in terms of how we use those insights. So I mentioned at the beginning that MaxDiff is traditionally a method for ranking people's preferences. So we've essentially applied this to prioritizing value propositions. There's a lot of tools out there that let you set up these surveys pretty quickly. We have quite good experience with OpinionX, so they're good, cost effective, but there's plenty of tools out there that you can use to do that. And then basically linking in what you've learned from the jobs we've done interviews and developing the survey in this way adds a robustness to the approach. So essentially the snapshot of how this works when you're looking at building out a MaxDiff survey. So when you're designing the survey, you need to think about the research questions that we're trying to answer and tailor it based on this. So thinking about what are the most and least valuable benefits, which benefits do certain segments uniquely value, which benefits are uniquely valued by all segments, which benefits should we communicate to different user segments. So you can segment stuff, you can go deep and and expand, design something that is different for each segment, or you can make it quite broad and keep it more simple. So it depends how you want to cut up the data, really. And then how customizable do you want the survey to be? Which tool do you want to consider that's within your budget? So you can obviously spend a lot of money on a super fancy tool, or you can, get something that's a bit more cost effective. And then you need to think about data collection. So how do you collect the data? There's lots of different ways to do that: in-app methods, integrated survey tools like custom development, having like a built custom survey function in the app, external methods like email, online survey platforms, email surveys. We used in-app using Iterable, and that worked pretty well. I think it took us about 3 weeks maybe to get enough responses. So yeah, so essentially why it matters, MaxDiff really helped us prioritize which value propositions to emphasize in the onboarding flow, and therefore we could focus on the ones that users most cared about and use that information to synthesize which screens to use. So how do you bridge the gap from research to designing the new flow? That's the kind of that's where the tricky part begins. Basically, it's you've obviously got a lot of data. You really need to understand like what to prioritize. And so basically during jobs to be done interviews and MaxDiff surveys, you get a variety of insights into like context, goals, preferences, and then they're used to basically identify which screens we should prioritize. So essentially it's about pattern spotting, prioritizing specific problems, and then also linking to this bespoke nature of your app. And then that feeds into test design, which I'll cover more in the next slide. But essentially for FMJ, we did see that users were caring about like different things. So we kind of wanted to understand a bit more about that via a personalized quiz. There already was like a quiz on the onboarding, but we kind of enhanced it. There's also about addressing specific problems. So people were saying that their main problem was that journaling was hard to stick to. So we developed a habit building screen based on like notifications. And then also there was this like bespoke appeal for FMJ via influencers, because they had a physical product. The big their 5-minute journal was kind of promoted by influencers originally. So it's kind of felt like a good route to focus on, and reflected what we kind of learned in the interviews. So this is a bit about our process for testing. So in an ideal world, you would roll out a big change incrementally to validate each new screen via like an A/B test. So we actually created 4 different iterations before the new onboarding flow, before we ran the full new onboarding flow and measured the overall ARP uplift. But again, it depends on how much time and resource you have at your disposal, how complicated the product is. There's lots of different factors that could affect things like that. But I think in general, you should always be testing. So we follow the sequential method for A/B testing, and we use Analytics Toolkit to make this possible. So they have certain statistical methods that make that possible, which is like super interesting. And we are at the moment exploring other ways to enhance that. So there's tools like StatSig and things which are super like interesting and have like really smart processes. So there's like lots of ways you can do that. But at the minimum, I would recommend that. And then it's especially the next thing is that's super important is defining your key success metrics and trade-off metrics. So make sure you've got that defined early on, because you want to make sure that's super clear for everyone. Everyone's on the same page what to expect from the test, and as well as a rigorous QA process, because like I said, we did run into quite a few problems with this, just because we happen to have like an app that was built on like different code, and ran into a few development issues when finalizing execution. So but I would say also the execution wouldn't be possible without the right tools. So you yeah, you have like a certain tech stack for this. So we had Amplitude for analysis, Revenue Cat obviously for subscription management, and then Firebase for test setup. So I think that's like super important, and obviously whatever you want to use for your statistical rigor. But there's lots of tools out there. So yeah, that's kind of a rough outline on A/B testing. So I'll quickly go through the results. So this is the original quiz. I haven't included all the slides. So obviously you can look at the app and see the onboarding that we set up, which is obviously still there. But I can obviously share if you want to see the full flow. I can share it afterwards. But this is the quiz part. So 5 pretty basic questions. It had been a while since it had been updated, so we were like, we can definitely improve this. So we personalized it with benefit-led and interactive habit-forming screens. So you've got basically breaking up the flow a bit. So having this benefit-led, what you achieve with gratitude journaling, and then really influencing like the copy here, based on what people were talking about, and then added a couple of other things like other important areas and problems that users are trying to solve. So consistency is the key to cultivating habits. So that was identified as like a key issue in terms of habit building for journaling. So we put in this interactive screen that really kind of did perform really well. And then adding a couple of other probing questions to understand like what the challenges actually are in actual from users actually using and downloading the app. And we found that tends to work really well as well. So it's kind of linked, obviously, like there's a lot of back and forth and obviously, in coming up with these slides and how to prioritize them. And I think like, it's conversations with the developers to see what's possible. It's like pushing a certain agenda. It's like trying to figure out what will be the most impactful. And obviously you want to test each screen as you go along. So it's possible with sequential testing essentially. So this we also peppered social proof throughout the flow. So the first screen went at the beginning, and that actually performed really well on its own. And then the others basically were kind of peppered throughout the flow. So it just to provide some authority and basically help you progress through the flow and give that sort of added trust. So like I said, these are some of the key changes highlighted. We also focused on improving some of the UX and changed the intro a little bit so that it flowed better. But overall, these are the biggest changes that we introduced. So key results. We tend to focus on ARPU, so we measure that in Amplitude. Look at the revenue uplift, and we saw 20%, which is pretty good over like a 24-day period. That was a core metric, and then we had trial start rate and day one retention also tracking, because they were the ones that FMJ were like super interested in, and they were what kind of needed some attention as well. So we did pretty well with all of those. So I think that's it really. Like I guess takeaways for sort of user-centric optimization. I think it's basically, these research methods are really, really good. Like we found them really effective. They're maybe not right for everyone. So I think, use the methods that work for you and find the sort of combination that works for your app. But these, definitely something that, I mean, MaxDiff definitely is easier to set up than jobs to be done. If you are looking at jobs to be done, then you'd want to run at least like 5 interviews in order to make that effective. But you can run more if you have the resource. And then you can also get pretty clever with that. I know a lot of apps are kind of doing this at the moment in terms of personalizing onboarding and using this sort of data to do that. So you can segment users, you can test different flows depending on what segment you're looking at, customize it to fit their different goals. Something we're kind of exploring at the moment as well. And then basically continuously test and iterate. I think users are changing their minds all the time, their needs are changing, so I think you need to evolve. And I think, the only way you can do that is by continuously testing and iterating on the flow. And I don't know, obviously this is quite a big project, so I would say maybe it's, I don't know, every 6 to 9 months you could probably look at that realistically. And you don't always have to do such big changes. You could do small incremental gains. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. So, any questions?
Awesome. Yeah, we actually have a few questions, and then I could ask you like 100 questions. So we might not go the full hour this time, but we'll start with the questions that came in, and then I have a few questions I'd love to ask along the
Sure.
way. So Sebastian asked, you mentioned this slide performed quite well. Assuming like this page in the onboarding performed quite well. What approach or metrics did you use to evaluate that specifically? So like as you assembled all the different possible questions, uh, yeah, how did you actually evaluate the performance of each one individually once you started putting those back into the app?
So do you mean in terms of the screens, or do you mean in terms of
Yeah, the screens.
the screens? Yeah. So we, like I said, we created like 4 different iterations. So we started with the social proof slide that I think screen that I think you're talking about now. So yeah, so we measured the trial start and ARPU. So basically you ran it for 2 weeks and you tested the screen, and then you moved on to the next iteration. So we kind of evaluated the similar metrics that we would normally use to evaluate the whole flow, but obviously like we're kind of wanted to move quite quickly, so we just focused on an indication of ARP uplift, and then moved on to the next and trial start rate, and then moved on to the next iteration. So
So what did those
it, it,
iterations look like specifically then? Like was one iteration like you had you put the social proof in and that was one iteration like now we have social proof, or were you actually iterating where you had different social proof and you would measure the uplift of this social proof page
oh, I
versus
see.
that social proof page?
Yeah, so so the first screen that we had was that quite striking sort of what was it called? Yeah, anyway, the first social proof screen that I showed you. So that would just be added in next to the usual flow, and then we would move on to the next iteration, which would be that was to do with the intro screens that we improved, and then we moved on to the next iteration, which was the personalized quiz. And then with the personalized quiz, there were quite a few different changes because we didn't really have the time to test each one separately. So we added in a couple of different questions, the consistency notification screen and other social proof screens. So like I said, in an ideal world, we would have tested each one and maybe done like focus on social proof first, then moved on to the next sort of theme. But we didn't really have the time to do it all, I guess. So we kind of did them in batches.
Gotcha.
Which
Yeah.
I think that's something I would change if I did it again. And we have kind of run this sort of thing with other apps and done it a bit more thoroughly. So this was, I think, the first time we'd kind of done this. At the time. So we made a few mistakes, but we learned from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll interject a question here. What kind of traffic was coming into the app? I know that that's always tricky. And so like, yes, in an ideal world, you would, test every screen individually and multiple iterations and all that kind of stuff. But I imagine some of the limitations around that were even just getting enough people through the flow to be able to get to statistical significance. And so batching it, especially for a smaller app or even a medium-sized app, it's like you almost have to do these kind of batches versus doing those individual screens so that it doesn't take a month or 2 months to test each iteration.
Yeah. So so we because we'd run a few tests like previously, and we would get into stat sig in like about 2 to 3 weeks in general. So the app had enough traffic to do that with other tests. So we kind of just use that as a bit of a baseline, because we'd run other paywall tests previously, and obviously onboarding you're going to get maybe slightly bigger traffic anyway. So there was enough traffic to be able to do that. So we kind of we tested before, and we kind of had an indication of like how long that might take. But yeah, like I guess they're kind of like what medium size app, kind of decent sort of MRR, and like enough users to be able to carry out some tests, but obviously you couldn't move as quickly as some other bigger apps.
Yeah.
So you do
Yeah,
have
it's one
to.
thing I've talked to folks at Duolingo, and
Yeah.
one of the things they've said is they have a massive luxury in their testing, in that they have
I,
so many people coming through that they can test so many iterations because they have so many people coming through. So you almost have to balance those two factors. And it sounds like maybe it wasn't a huge mistake to do it in batches, in that if it still took 2 to 3 weeks to get to statistical significance, like you kind of had to batch things
yeah.
versus like trying to test each individual screen individually just
Yeah, I would have.
would have taken too. Malik asks, I'm going to butcher, I should probably just not say people's names so I don't butcher people's names. Anyways, the next question is, how much do you care about onboarding completion rate? I've seen that sometimes lower completion rate and higher ARPU can come together. Yeah, it's a really good question. Like, and do you use onboarding to filter out the low intent people and that's okay, or are you using onboarding to like get as many people to the paywall as possible? Like what's your thoughts on that, and what have you seen both with this specific project and then maybe even with other apps that you've worked with?
Yeah, onboarding. I think onboarding completion rate is definitely important. Like, it gives you a good indication. If it's really low. I mean, obviously, like every app has their own benchmark. So you can what works for what's good for one app isn't maybe good for another app. But in general, like we do track it. But I guess we're more in terms of higher ARP, we're more interested in revenue uplift than ARPU most of the time. Again, like the success metrics change depending on what app you're kind of looking at and
Right.
what the priorities are, right? So I think, I don't know, the correlation makes sense. Like, it might be to do with so what we saw actually with FMJ, one of the reasons why we saw a higher ARPU, I'll have to double check the onboarding completion rate, but we saw a higher share of annual plans after running the longer onboarding. So even if you've got a lower completion rate, maybe there's some reason why more users are going for the annual plan, and therefore you would see a higher ARPU. So there is that, which like.
Yeah, so it sounds like the revenue per user really was your kind of key metric that you were optimizing against, and the fact that you don't even remember whether completion rate went up or down kind of shows that you really were more focused on the monetization piece than the
Yeah,
completion piece, which
yeah,
which I think makes sense. It's like that's what you want. It's like
yeah,
even if, I mean, that's an interesting thing about these long onboarding funnels, is that you are kind of filtering intent. Is that by the time and introducing sunk cost fallacy and other things too, it's like the longer people have uh, gone through this onboarding, the more likely they are and the more invested they are to go ahead and start that trial and like get into the app. And I don't think I think it can be used as a dark pattern. Like if your app actually isn't any good and you're just using the long onboarding to kind of
yeah,
trick people
yeah.
into
That's
signing up. But the opposite is that for a great app, which funny enough, I actually used the physical version of the 5 minute journal years
oh
ago.
yeah,
I was
all right.
super, yeah, I loved it. I still have a copy that I've got through probably 100 pages of my
Oh,
physical
nice.
copy. So I love the product, so I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
very much relate to it. Um,
Cool.
and so then the interesting thing is, like, when you have a product that really does deliver, sometimes, pushing people through that long onboarding actually helps build that intent and build
Yeah,
that investment into the app, so that once and what I've heard from folks is that sometimes those long onboardings actually can generate better retention in the long run as well, because once you've taken that time and really, customized and personalized, and you feel like the app's like really,
yeah, yeah.
listening to you and gonna solve those needs. And that's kind of what you were talking about with jobs to be done. It's like you focus this whole onboarding around solving those jobs to be done, and so when people finish the onboarding, they feel like, oh, this app gets me, is actually going to solve these problems for
Yeah,
me. And so in those ways, I think onboarding can really drive that revenue and longer term retention, even if the completion rate goes down, which seems at odds, but isn't always at odds because of those factors.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We have also seen, like, if it's for smaller sort of productivity, like time tracking app, but we saw that if users didn't, if they skipped questions during onboarding, they had a lower activation. So, which we were
Right.
looking at some sort of correlation analysis, and started to look into that in terms of because they got a bit of an activation problem anyway. But yeah, I think there's definitely something in getting the right mix, or getting the right number of screens, or like the right tone, all of that stuff. I mean, I think, is it
Yeah.
Dimensional? They've got some crazy onboarding. It's like 100, like almost 100 screens or something crazy.
I don't know. What app is
I
that? You
think
said
it's, I think it's
dimensional?
I think it's, I don't have my my other phone.
Yeah.
I think it's, oh, I think, yeah, Dimensional. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the ones we looked at. I mean, it was crazy, crazy long. And I think that's kind of
Yeah.
maybe the type of app that it is. Maybe that's good and it works for their audience.
Yeah. I think
I-
and for some apps, and I've talked to utility app developers where if somebody is looking to get value out of the app, like let's say a scanning app might
yeah,
be a good example. It's like if they've downloaded your app because they have a document to scan,
yeah,
and you can get them to that kind of, magic moment very quickly of scanning that document and getting the task accomplished. Sometimes a shorter onboarding is going to win
yeah,
if you can quickly kind of deliver the value that they're going to experience and feel that value, and then be more likely to retain and pay and all those things.
yeah,
um, and
yeah.
then on the flip side, there's other apps where that buildup really does help. So I think it really is like so context
Yeah. And then some, yeah, the other thing,
dependent.
yeah, yeah, that's super interesting.
But I wanted to interject. Go ahead.
So yeah, I don't
I
know if
wanted
it's,
to interject one more question before is my video cutting out?
no, no, I'm not sure if it was me or you, but anyway, yeah, it's all good now, I think.
Okay. Okay. I wanted to interject another question. You'd mentioned the correlation between people skipping questions and lower activation. Um, and I was thinking this as you're going through, the skip was pretty prominent. In that app or in other apps. Have you experimented with removing the skip, like forcing people to go through that entire onboarding versus kind of allowing the easy out of just skipping?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, like, it's a fine line, isn't it, between like annoying users
Right.
and you want them to have a good experience. So if they have, and part of that good experience is maybe having, if the users feel like they have the choice, they're more inclined to complete stuff, you could say.
Right.
It's kind of like the psychological, um what's it called? Yeah, I'm sure there's like some psychology behind it, but so I guess that also depends on the app, right? So if it's something like, if say, you really need to work to get your value, like, proposition understood, or like maybe there's, I don't know, what have I looked at recently? Um, Trying to think,
Well,
because
one question
I
I
can't.
had related to that was, like, in 5 Minute Journal, does tapping the skip button, it looked like maybe it skips that section of onboarding, not necessarily skips all of onboarding. So maybe that's like the kind of in between. It's like you can
Skip a
have
section.
some mandatory pages, but then the skip skips a section, not skips the entire onboarding.
Yeah, I think that's a good. Yeah, that's also
It-
good.
it- am I assuming that correctly, that that's how it actually worked?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, it broke up a little bit. So I think you were asking about like sections being skipped. I guess with FMJ, it wasn't like too many questions. Say like yeah, um, you wouldn't kind of need to skip too much. David's gone. Are you there, Dave? Hang on. I can probably go through some questions myself whilst David comes back. Alrighty, let's have a look. So, right, let's go through this. Well, yeah. So I mean, Philip's go on. So do you conduct different tests on Android and iOS platforms? Do you optimize onboarding for specific platforms? So for this in particular, we focused on iOS. I have seen with other apps very different performances on Android and iOS because obviously the audiences are quite different. So we do run different testing. We run different experiments across different platforms. So whether that's different pricing structures or like slightly different. I mean, we haven't done onboarding, but yeah, we've done other paywall tests. And yeah, like some stuff works on iOS, some stuff doesn't work on Android, and vice versa. So I would definitely recommend looking into that. If you want to ask users' names and emails, it's best to do as the first. Oh, cool. Hey, you're back, David.
Am I back?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Sorry
yeah.
about that.
It's all good.
Yeah, so it looks like the next question was if you want to ask users name and email, is it best to do it as the first or second onboarding screen or the last one? Have you had any experience with that?
Normally the first, I think, towards the start. If you want to use it like later on, then I would say have it up front, and then you can kind of personalize the rest of the flow, and it's quite nice. Haven't really tested it, so I don't know if it. I mean, I haven't seen a huge drop off with the apps that we've worked on with like username, email, maybe like wait until you create an account or something, which is later because you want to have like value first, right?
Right.
You want users to experience the value and understand the app before you kind of ask them for too much. But name is fine, I think, early on.
Cool. Which question did you answer while I was gone so I
I
can kind of check that one off?
I did the conduct different tests on Android and iOS platforms. Philip's go on.
Okay. All right.
I did that
We'll
one.
answer that one. All right. Here's another one. Thanks for sharing your insight. Love this kind of stuff. How do you bring in or advertise these user interviews in order to get the info? Trying to think of how to invite people in. You mentioned you did it in app. So for the jobs to be done surveys and the MaxDiff, this was like a banner inside the app where you and how do and I love the question because like it is hard to get people to answer things and then you also may get skewed responses. So how did you actually present this to users?
It was an in-app message, so I think it. We obviously had an incentive. I think it was like a 50 like euro Amazon voucher or something like that. And then yeah, you kind of try and get a mixture, right? So you screen users and understand a little bit about them before You get them to complete like the survey, so you have a good mix of users, like new and existing, or like new who haven't subscribed. There's a variety of different ways you can kind of segment that, but I think it's all to do like how you screen the user. But yeah, but like I said, like the in-app, yeah, that worked for us pretty well. So I was surprised.
Yeah.
Because you want to get, yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
think we
don't
had about
I
600 responses over
Oh wow.
about 3 or 4 weeks or something. So it was like, sorry, that was for a different app. For FMJ, it took a bit longer. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
But to get a little more specific, like inside the app, where did you put it? Because I mean that's always a tension, right? Is that you can bury stuff in settings, but people don't always go to settings very often. So I would imagine you put it relatively front and center within the app in order to get the kind of response rate you needed to get answers.
Yeah, it's just a little like pop-up-y thing on the home screen.
Okay.
So we didn't like want to, well,
Like kind of a little banner that
yeah, a
drops
little black
down
box,
or
a
something
little
like that.
little sort of square thing. It didn't take up the whole screen, but it was just like,
Gotcha.
would you be interested in doing
And I assume you
pop-up?
used iterable for that.
We used iterable for one. Yeah, we used iterable for one client. For FMJ, I can't remember.
But it would be that sort of a
It was
tool
that
of
sort of
like,
tool. Like you need
yeah,
something to,
inside the app that's capable of popping those little questions up, right?
unless you had like, I guess developers can easily do that as well, right? You can have a
Yeah,
native thing, but then
probably, but it
capturing
seems
the,
so much easier to just use a tool
yeah, I think
because
so.
yeah, you got to capture and analyze all the results and all
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah. So that'd be a bit,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it
All right,
I
we
mean,
actually have quite a few more questions.
oh well,
So,
yeah.
yeah, did you have one more thing to say there?
No, I was just, yeah, I think the incentive, I mean, the incentive, it depends like on the category, right? So you you might have people just willing to take part in stuff, in which case you could, I mean, I don't know if like offering like a free subscription is enough. You could try it, but you might get a lower response. So we found that offering like a cash incentive was quite good. Like,
Right.
so yeah, you have to budget for it, I guess. I mean, it wasn't that
Yeah.
expensive. Like,
All right, the next question is how much do you think the new social proof screens played a role? I really like the first one, that the new users see first. Yeah, and I mean, I guess you might not have this off the top of your head, um, but I'm wondering, like, was there any like aha moments, like when you introduced that screen? Did you see like a really big bump, or which of the screens did you see those like biggest bumps with?
yeah, the one on the left, so I've just put it up again. So the happier you in 5 minutes a day, and I don't know why that worked. I mean, I don't know why that worked so well, to be honest. I mean, it's got like some nice social proof. I mean, we kind of um, designed it with like few others in mind, like in the category. So it was kind of maybe borrowed a little bit from some others in the category. Um, and yeah, we plonked it at the start just to see if it would see how it would do. And we had a bit of an inkling just from the research, because like I said, to do with like this, the social influence sort of uh, back to app, and the fact that it had been promoted, like, with the physical product had been promoted by um, influencers and things. So there's this link, like, would sharing those to the audience, would the audience that will recognize these names and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, we saw quite a good uplift. I'll have to come back to you on what it was. I can check that with the team and let you
Yeah, but it
follow up.
sounds like it was a pretty big unlock to add
But
that
that
social
was,
proof in.
yeah, that was good. So we
Yeah,
then we added these other ones afterwards. We kind of designed those just to pepper throughout, just because the first one worked so well.
yeah,
Um,
and I like the idea. You had that one slide with like answering the four questions and like putting. It's like solving those like instinctual questions that people ask. Can I trust this app? Is one of those four kind of instinctual questions that people feel, even
Yeah.
if they're not consciously thinking it.
Yeah.
And so, like, disarming that question with the social proof,
Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
like it is a very powerful strategy. And then, especially with like influencers, and I did love the screen. I think this is the one Devin is referring to, where you actually show that it was app of the day, and it was like covered in all these different
Yeah. So you're
online
like,
publications. And so it's like really kind of setting people at ease, like this is
yeah.
a trustworthy app, people
Yeah.
actually like and use this.
Yeah. So it definitely
Yeah.
appeals to a certain audience. Um,
All right, well, we've got 10 minutes left and we still got more questions, so let's this is
let's do
usually
them.
usually I ramble so much during these webinars that we don't have time to answer all the questions, but we might get to them all today. um
Let's
All
give
right,
it a go.
Abby asks, is the call to action at the end of your onboarding asking the user to subscribe? Did you promote a yearly subscription as a call to action? Do you allow users to explore the app if they don't go for the call to action?
Yeah, good question. So there was, I mean, yeah, you do ask them to subscribe at the end. Say there's a paywall, if that's what you mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's what Devin was
yeah.
asking.
There's
So,
definitely a paywall at the end. And then we did focus on just promoting the annual, yeah, the yearly subscription, definitely. And that worked better. I mean, I don't know
and
if it's,
then was there a freemium experience? So could you X out of the paywall and like get
yeah,
some amount of usage out of the
yeah,
app?
which I think like, yeah, was maybe not the best move. Like like we did play around with that afterwards, and we in terms of like the features that were put behind the the freemium experience, and we did find that certain um yeah, like I think the mood, there's a mood tracker, and actually like if we put that behind the paywall, and actually more users were interested in the in the in well, we saw a trial start rate increase. Um, so it seemed like people, like users, more interested in that feature. So I think, yeah. So obviously you could do journal entry. I think you could only upload one photo um at the time. So there were like limits to what you could do, but you could definitely like journal every day if you wanted to. So that's why I thought it was, maybe we were trying to figure out like the best mix of that, and whether we should do like try a hard paywall. We didn't in the end. Um,
Yeah.
but I definitely
It's
think
really
that,
hard to balance like business goal and then for something like a journal
yeah,
that's supposed to be like improving people's mental health. And
yeah,
I've talked to a
yeah,
lot of like mission driven
I,
apps as well, where it's like you want to help improve people's mental health, and if you
yeah,
paywall everything or do a hard
yeah,
paywall, then maybe that's
exactly,
not the best aligned with the mission of the company.
yeah,
But then for a lot of apps, I mean, I did this in my own app, and I've
yeah,
seen it a lot more people are using the hard paywall because and it just depends on user economics too, where if it's expensive to serve and there's not this mission to like help people, having a hard paywall can be really powerful to convert
yeah,
users.
yeah,
But it's a tough balance. You got to make that decision based on what
yeah.
kind of
What?
business you're wanting to build.
Yeah, yeah. So does it align with like business expectations?
Yeah.
Um, so in the end, like I think there was such a big user base that were free and were not willing to pay.
Right.
Which, so it was mad. Like we were trying to like
Well,
we
that's
trying to
just the
crack that.
case. Like, I mean, we shared that in the state of subscription apps report. Even the
Yeah,
best apps are only monetizing,
yeah,
10,
small percentage.
15% of
Yeah,
users turn into paid users. And
yeah.
so there's just,
So do, yeah.
95 to 85% of people who ever open an app are just not ever going to be
I
willing
know.
to pay for that app. And that
Yeah,
just like is reality. So
yeah,
then the business choice is like, do we have some
yeah,
exchange of value where we give people something, and is there some benefit to having a large freemium base? Will they convert over time? Will
yeah,
they contribute to data? Will they share it with their friends who are willing to pay? It's like there's
yeah,
all these questions you can ask of like, what
yeah,
is that freemium base doing for us, and
yeah.
is it worth having, or is it
That's
worth
why.
just
Yeah,
doing the hard paywall?
that's why these like hybrid monetization models are like super interesting. Like, you know,
Yeah.
experimenting more with that and seeing what users are actually willing to pay for outside of like a subscription. or is
Hmm.
there something they'd be like smaller cost that they'd be willing to pay for?
Yeah,
Um,
5 minute journal would
so
be a perfect place to experiment
yeah,
with that kind of thing because you
yeah,
could say, like two journal sessions a week are free, and then it's like you could
yeah,
buy
the
20
pack.
journal sessions for five
Mhm.
bucks or something. Yeah,
Yeah,
you could buy a
yeah,
pack of journal sessions. Like that kind of like defined user experience around journaling
mm,
maybe lends itself to
yeah,
opportunities to experiment and
yeah,
almost like micropayments, like pay per journaling session kind of thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Be super. Yeah, that's not a bad shout.
Yeah. All right, we've got a couple more questions. What are some good questions to ask during onboarding to understand user pain motivation to use the app to make sure you focus on the right users? This is an interesting one. It kind of sparks an idea too. I mean, I want you to answer that question, but maybe intertwined into that question, you know, onboarding is a time when you're going to have the most users coming through, and asking questions similar to what you would ask in a survey, but asking it during onboarding might be a good
Actually,
opportunity to like get more signal in your questions. So maybe answer both of those questions. Is what are some good questions to ask? And then maybe my question is like, could onboarding maybe substitute for doing the questions
yeah,
like with the people who are already in the app?
yeah. So if you're strapped for time, you could potentially just use up the onboarding to kind of get the data right. It's an option. Maybe like yeah, less. It's obviously less rigorous, but then if you don't have the time to do these research studies, then obviously yeah, like do that. You get some insights. Um, I think good questions to ask during onboarding. I mean, in terms of like pain motivation to use the app to make sure we fix the right users. I mean, yeah, there's no. I mean, it depends on the goals within the app, right? So what is depending on the category, um, what's the main focus of the app, and then so you need to figure out, understand, make sure it's answering those, or getting under the hood of like why people are using the app. So
Yeah.
um, I think yeah, what challenges do you face with journaling, for example? So you could you could easily apply that to other things, like what challenges are you facing with your uh well, I don't know if you want to be as specific as like mental health, but like it's
Yeah.
it's like understanding like your goal. You could even ask what are your goals with using this app, and then you could
Right.
list like the bunch of goals. Um, you could also like maybe get them to prioritize their goals on a screen, so that you've got them in order, and then you can like use that later on in the app to personalize certain things, certain elements. Um, so I think yeah, understanding that is probably I guess not just about goals as well. It's like yeah, motivation. So you could easily you get those screens where you have a statement, and then you're like, do you agree with this? So you can also understand motivations and things like that using those screens. So I think it's like thinking about yeah, those types of things to 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 map out the questions that are most relevant. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think you kind of answered this question in that question is that you mentioned users often don't know what they want. Do you have any tips to uncover their core jobs to be done without accidentally leading them in interviews or surveys? I guess that is kind of a
Mm.
different question. Like, how do you ask the questions in the right way to actually get at those jobs to be done? And then that kind of answers the question previously too, is that it's like you want to have a framework for the kinds of questions you ask, and jobs to be done is a great framework to brainstorm those questions through that framework. But then how do
Yeah.
you actually ask the question, or how do you frame the questions in a way that's not overly leading or doesn't like kind of tip your hypothesis, but actually like develop new hypothesis around what those jobs to be done are?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it is in the yeah, it is in the set. It's in the yeah design of the interview structure. Say like yeah, you don't want to ask leading questions. So it's about uncovering. So you could ask like um what other solutions the users been looking at, what made them, what motivated them to use those solutions. what's a certain trigger behind why you're thinking about the problem that you're trying to address. Like, so so they're specific, but they're not like, you can't ask a user about their job, for example. Like, that's something you have to define after the interview. You want to understand like what makes them tick. You want to understand what their like motivations are. So you kind of have to position it. It's more just sometimes the conversation goes in the direction that the user happens to talk about, right? So sometimes they go quite deep and you kind of get to know quite a lot about them, right? And then other times it's a bit more general. So I think so design, like that you said, David, like designing those questions is like at the start and having this guide. Obviously, like I said, you go off script and you kind of go with the flow sometimes, but then you always want to bring it back to the sort of the core, like the dimensions I mentioned before. So you have the core dimensions and the extended dimensions. So if you want to uncover some social aspects, maybe there's some social like influence that affects a user from using the app or something. So there you have to kind of figure out what you want to get out of it, I guess, and then position the questions in that way.
Right.
So I actually I have created a guide. Myself and Michael have created a guide, which I'll promote on LinkedIn, but you can message me if you want to get it, and I can send it to you. Just add me on LinkedIn or something, and it kind of goes into interview structure and stuff and what to think about. So we created that because thought it might be quite useful for people to understand.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So we have hit the top of the hour, but there's one last question that I think is maybe a good place to end. And that's from Abby. Are there any books on onboarding that you would recommend, books or other resources on onboarding that you'd recommend for app developers new to optimizing onboarding? And then where can I learn more about jobs to be done?
So I think it's Clayton Christensen, who is like one of the original Jobs to be done like creators, or like he at least popularized it. Don't hold me to that, but I think he does have a book that goes into the detail of it. Tony Ulwick as well he promoted Jobs to be done a lot, and there's like a 200-page book that he has, which is like super interesting. Hooked by Near Eel is like a interesting general, more like product management, talks about research and stuff as well. So those are what spring to mind that I found quite useful. And then in terms of where you can learn more about jobs to be done, like I said, I've got this guide. There's lots of stuff on the Revenue Cap blog.
Yeah, Peter's sharing some great links.
There's a few case studies.
Yeah.
I think Daphne Tildman talks about jobs to be
Yep.
done quite a lot. She's got some really good stuff, so look her up. I post about stuff. What else?
Yeah, I think that's good. And
Yeah.
these days I've been shocked at how good answers are from LLMs. It's like
Oh
just
yeah, actually, yeah.
go into like ChatGPT deep
Yeah.
research and say, I'm new to the idea of jobs to be done, and I'm focused on onboarding
Yeah.
for a mobile app. Like, find me
It's great.
resources, explain it to me, help me. Man, it's amazing what
It's crazy. Yeah.
how good they are at giving answers
Uh,
like that. So that's
yeah.
another great place to start.
Yeah.
All
Claude.
right. Well,
Yeah.
Jason, it's been so fun having you. And thanks for staying over. And I think this is the most questions we've ever answered on one of these webinars. So it's great that we left plenty of time and a lot of
Nice.
really great insights too. I think, something folks can meaningfully impact revenue. I mean, onboarding is just so
Yeah,
important to getting people to monetize, to getting people to activate with the app and stay retained over time. And so it's just such a powerful place to be iterating. And so hopefully folks will be able to take away some ideas here and see similar, 20%, 50%. It's crazy the kind of uplift you can see
yeah,
by
yeah,
experimenting with your paywall and onboarding, the kind of questions you ask, the social proof, all those kind of things. Like, it can dramatically change a business
yeah.
by iterating on these things. So I think super helpful insights that you shared today, and appreciate you coming on.
Nice. Yeah, great to meet you, and yeah, loved it. Happy to, yeah, get involved.
Awesome. And thank you everybody for joining and for all the great questions. Bye.
Thanks, guys.